A $500 million deal is about to collapse. At a private table in New York's most exclusive restaurant, two arrogant executives are trying to bully a mysterious Japanese billionaire, Mr. Kaito Tanaka, who refuses to speak a single word of English. They mock him. They insult his translator. They think he's a fool. The deal is dead. But they all overlooked one person, the waitress clearing their plates. They thought she was just part of the furniture. They were wrong, and she just understood every single word. The air inside Ethelred's was not just air. It was a carefully curated atmosphere. At $3,000 a head for the tasting menu, guests didn't just pay for food. They paid for a specific, weighty silence, the kind that feels heavier and more expensive than the Baccarat crystal glasses. The restaurant, tucked away in a cobblestone Tribeca alley, had no sign. If you had to ask where it was, you couldn't afford it. And Eleanor Vance, Ellie, couldn't afford it. She just worked there. At 28, Ellie was a ghost in this world of titans. She moved with an economy of motion honed by 6-hour shifts, balanced on agonizingly chic, pencil-thin heels. Her uniform, a simple black sheath, was designed to make her disappear. And that's what she was good at. Disappearing. She was also good at listening. The party in the Sovereign Room. Gregory, the restaurant's severe maître d', whispered, his voice like gravel on silk. He adjusted his $5,000 Brioni tie. "They are your only focus for the night, Vance. No mistakes." "Who is it?" Ellie asked, polishing a Riedel decanter until it squeaked in protest. "You don't need to know who. You need to know what. They are handled with extreme care. The host is Richard Sterling of Apex Global. He's loud." Gregory's nose wrinkled, the closest he ever came to an emotional display. But he's not the guest of honor. The guest is Kaito Tanaka. Ellie's hands paused. The Kaito Tanaka, the reclusive genius from Tokyo, the man who had single-handedly reinvented geothermal energy and whose company, Tanaka Dynamics, was now poised to obsolete lithium-ion batteries. She had studied him. "He's a myth," Ellie murmured. "He's a billionaire, which is more important," Gregory hissed. "Apex Global is trying to merge with, or more likely buy, his US operations. This is a $500 million dinner, Vance." Now the main problem. Tanaka is notoriously traditional. He brings his own translator. He supposedly doesn't speak a word of English. Sterling, on the other hand, speaks only dollar. So it will be volatile. You are to be deaf, dumb, and invisible. Pour the wine. Clear the plates. Do not exist. Understood? Understood. Ellie finished her prep. She was invisible, yes, but she wasn't deaf, and she certainly wasn't dumb. Eleanor Vance held a master's degree in East Asian economic policy from Columbia. Her unfinished PhD thesis, the one she had to abandon, was titled The New Shogunate: How Kaito Tanaka's Energy Patents Are Reshaping Global Politics. She had to abandon it all when her brother, Liam, got sick. The experimental treatments for his rare autoimmune disease had bankrupted their family, dragging Ellie out of the ivory tower and into the real world, forcing her to trade her doctoral robes for a waitress's apron. The debt was a mountain, $450,000 high and growing, so she worked. She served $800 bottles of $98 Petrus to men who used her thesis topic as a negotiating chip, and she listened. At 8:05 p.m., the sharks arrived. Richard Sterling was a wall of sound and cologne. He was broad-shouldered, with a booming voice and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Gregory, my man, the room better be perfect." He was followed by his number 2, Marcus Thorne, a smaller, leaner man with the nervous energy of a jackal. "Of course, Mr. Sterling," The sovereign room is prepared. Good, good. Now, when Mr. Tanaka arrives, he is already here, a quiet voice said. A man stepped out of the shadows of the vestibule. He was small, impeccably dressed in a dark, simple suit, and radiated an aura of absolute stillness. This was Kaito Tanaka. He was flanked by a single, nervous-looking young man, clutching a leather briefcase, the translator. "Mr. Tanaka, welcome," Sterling boomed, clapping Tanaka on the shoulder. Ellie winced. You don't touch Kaito Tanaka. It was a legendary cultural faux pas. Tanaka didn't flinch. He didn't react at all. He simply looked at Sterling's hand on his shoulder with a polite, cold curiosity, as if it were a strange insect that had landed on him. Sterling, realizing his mistake, withdrew his hand, his smile faltering for just a second. "This is my associate, Marcus Thorne." "A pleasure, sir," Marcus said, bowing too low, a caricature of respect. Tanaka just nodded, his face a perfect mask. Ellie, watching from the service door, felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't a dinner. It was a disaster waiting to happen. "Right. Well, let's get to the private room," Sterling said, recovering his bluster. "We've got a lot to talk about, a lot of money to make." As the group moved past, Ellie slipped into the corridor to follow them. She was invisible. She was just the waitress. But as she passed Mr. Tanaka, their eyes met for a fraction of a second. He saw her. His gaze wasn't dismissive, like Sterling's, or nervous, like Marcus's. It was analytical. He registered her, catalogued her, and dismissed her, all in the time it takes to blink. But in that instant, Ellie felt a chill. The man who was supposedly just a traditional old man had the sharpest, most intelligent eyes she had ever seen. She entered the sovereign room behind them, holding the silver water pitcher. The game had begun. The sovereign room was a fortress of mahogany and leather. A roaring fireplace, gas of course, cast flickering shadows on the walls. The table was set for 5. Ellie moved with silent grace, filling water glasses. Sterling, at the head of the table, immediately signaled for wine. "Bring the 98 Waitress, and don't be shy with it." Ellie retrieved the bottle, presented it, and opened it with the requisite ceremony. "So, Mr. Tanaka," Sterling began, raising his glass, "I speak for all of Apex Global when I say we are thrilled to finally sit down. Your time is valuable. Our time is valuable. Let's make this happen." The young translator, whose name was Kenji, leaned in and murmured to Tanaka in rapid, formal Japanese. Tanaka listened, his face impassive. He then replied in a short, quiet burst of Japanese. Kenji turned back to the Americans, his face pale. "Mr. Tanaka thanks you for the wine. He says it is very good." Ellie, who was setting down a basket of bread, almost dropped it. Her Japanese, honed over 5 years in Kyoto for her PhD research, was not just fluent. It was academic. She understood the nuances, the honorifics, the subtle levels of respect, and disrespect. What Mr. Tanaka actually said was, in Japanese, "This wine is French, a predictable choice for a man with no imagination. Ask him why he wastes my time with pleasantries." Ellie's blood ran cold. She kept her head down, her face a mask of polite service. Marcus Thorne, the jackal, leaned forward. "Mr. Tanaka, we've seen the reports on your K-12 hybrid patent. It's a fantastic green initiative. Very marketable. We love it." Again, the whisper translation. Tanaka's reply was longer this time, his tone flat and cold. Kenji, the translator, was visibly sweating. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Tanaka is pleased you admire his hobby." Ellie, standing by the service station, had to physically grip the marble counter to keep from reacting. What Tanaka actually said was, "In Japanese, he calls my life's work a green initiative, like it's a sticker for a child's lunchbox. He has no comprehension of what he's even trying to buy. He hasn't read the technical specs. He's only read the marketing report. This is an insult." Ellie felt a strange, vibrating anger. Not just for Tanaka, but for herself. This was her world, the world of ideas, of technology, of economic theory, and here it was, being butchered by these two oafs in expensive suits. The appetizers arrived, seared scallops with a truffle reduction. Ellie served Mr. Tanaka first, her hands perfectly steady. "You know," Sterling said, taking a huge bite, "we see a huge opportunity in the US. You've got the tech, but you've got no punch, no marketing, no distribution. That's where we come in. Apex Global is punch." He punctuated this by slamming a meaty fist on the ancient mahogany table, making the crystal glasses ring. Tanaka didn't even blink. He took a delicate, precise bite of his scallop. He chewed, he swallowed. Then he spoke in Japanese, his voice dangerously soft. Kenji, poor Kenji, looked like he was about to be sick. He stammered. "Mr. Tanaka asks, what is punch?" Sterling laughed. "Ha, I like him. Punch, Sonny, is an American term. It means power, force. It means we take your little solar panels, we slap our name on them, and we sell 1 billion units." Ellie was horrified. She knew from her research that Tanaka's K-12 patent wasn't just a solar panel. It was a molecular battery, a new form of energy storage woven into the silica itself. It wasn't a product, it was a revolution, and Sterling had just called it a little solar panel. Tanaka's reply was a single, icy word. Kenji translated, "He understands." Ellie, however, understood the real word. In Japanese, "Baka," idiot. Ellie fled to the kitchen to get the main courses. Her mind was racing. Tanaka knew. He knew these men were fools. But why was he here? Why was he letting this farce continue? When she returned, the atmosphere had chilled further. The main courses, Wagyu beef for the Americans, a simple grilled fish for Tanaka, were on the table. "Look, Kaito, can I call you Kaito?" Sterling said, leaning in. Tanaka just stared at him. "All right, Mr. Tanaka, let's cut the cultural stuff. Let's talk numbers." Marcus Thorne slid a glossy, leather-bound proposal across the table. "This is our offer. A full acquisition of Tanaka Dynamics US. 500 million. Cash." He tapped the folder. "That's a lot of yen, my friend." Ellie, pouring more wine, felt the disrespect like a physical blow. The condescension was suffocating. Tanaka did not look at the folder. He looked at his translator, Kenji. He spoke, and this time there was no mistaking the sharp, cold command in his voice. It was a torrent of Japanese, precise, technical, and utterly ruthless. Kenji went from pale to ghostly white. He was trembling. "What did he say?" Sterling demanded. "Did he say yes?" Kenji looked at his boss. He looked at the two Americans. He was trapped. "Mr. Tanaka," Kenji began, his voice cracking. "Mr. Tanaka is deeply honored by your offer. He says he will consider it." Ellie's hand, holding the heavy Petrus bottle, froze mid-air. It was a lie, a complete and total fabrication. What Kaito Tanaka had actually said, in flawless, brutal, and technical Japanese, was this. In Japanese, "This proposal is a joke. The valuation is off by a factor of 10. They haven't accounted for the cobalt suppression patent or the new silica weave test data. They are offering to buy a mountain and are valuing it as a pile of rocks. Tell these monkeys I am leaving. This meeting is an insult to my intelligence and a waste of my time. You, translator, have failed. You translated my scorn as appreciation. You are a coward." The room was silent, save for the sound of Richard Sterling chuckling. "See? He's smart. He knows a good deal. He'll consider it." "That's a yes. Well, this calls for a toast." He raised his glass. "To the future!" Mr. Tanaka slowly, very slowly, placed his chopsticks neatly on their holder. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, and he stood up. The sudden movement shattered the smug atmosphere. "Whoa, where's he going?" Sterling asked, his smile faltering. "To the bathroom?" Mr. Tanaka, ignoring him, turned to his translator and spoke one sharp word. It was a command. Kenji, the translator, sprang to his feet, his face a mask of dread. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Thorne, Mr. Tanaka must leave. He is not feeling well." "Not feeling well? What are you talking about? We're about to close." Richard Sterling stood up, his face reddening. He was a man who was not used to being told no. "This is unacceptable," Marcus Thorne said, his voice a low hiss. "We flew him here. We comped the hotel. He can't just walk out." Mr. Tanaka was already putting on his overcoat. He was a man of quiet, decisive action. The meeting was over. It was Richard Sterling who made the fatal mistake. He decided in his arrogance that the problem was the translator. "You!" Sterling shouted, jabbing a finger at Kenji. "You're not telling him right. You're screwing this up, aren't you?" "Sir, Kenji stammered. "He's not sick. You're just a bad translator. Tell him this is a $500 million offer, and if he walks out, it's off the table. Tell him." Kenji, caught between two masters, dithered. He tried to speak to Tanaka, but the words wouldn't come out. Sterling, in a fit of rage, shoved the young translator. "I said, tell him! Do your job!" Kenji stumbled backward, crashing into the service station where Ellie was standing. A tray of coffee service, the baccarat sugar bowl, the silver creamer, went flying, shattering on the hardwood floor. The room went dead silent. Ellie was frozen. Sterling was breathing heavily, his face puce. Marcus Thorne looked horrified. Kenji was on the floor, blinking back tears of humiliation amidst the scattered sugar cubes. And Mr. Tanaka just watched. His eyes, once cold and analytical, were now burning with a quiet, controlled fury. He spoke, his voice low and cutting. It was Japanese, but the tone was universal. He was dissecting Richard Sterling, piece by piece. Kenji, still on the floor, didn't even try to translate. "What?" Sterling barked. "What did he say now?" Tanaka looked at Sterling. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He spoke in English. It was not the broken, hesitant English of a tourist. It was the perfect, clipped, ruthless English of an Ivy League boardroom. He said, "Get out of my sight." Wait, no, that wasn't Tanaka. The voice was clear, female, and shaking with a cold rage. Every head in the room swiveled. Eleanor Vance stood amidst the wreckage of the coffee service, her hands clenched at her sides. She hadn't spoken in English. She had spoken in Japanese. She had been translating, instinctively, what Tanaka had just said. In Japanese, "Konobakara, quiero." Get out of my sight. There was a moment of profound, terrible silence. Richard Sterling looked at her, his brain clearly unable to process what had just happened. What did you say?" Marcus Thorne was the first to understand. She speaks it. Mr. Tanaka, who was halfway out the door, stopped. He turned around, very, very slowly. He looked at Ellie. Not as a ghost, not as furniture, but as a person. His blank expression was gone, replaced by a sharp, almost dangerous curiosity. "You," Tanaka said, in Japanese, in words, "Jap, anata wa wakarimasu ka?" "You understand?" Ellie was shaking. She had just thrown away her job. She had just stepped on a landmine. Gregory's words echoed in her head. Deaf, dumb, and invisible. She had failed on all 3 counts. Her entire future, Liam's medical bills, the mountain of debt, was about to collapse. She took a deep breath. She had nothing left to lose. She looked directly at Kaito Tanaka, squared her shoulders, and replied in flawless, formal Japanese. In Japanese, "Hai, Tanaka-sama. Subete wakarimasu." Yes, Lord Tanaka, I understand everything. Richard Sterling's face was a masterpiece of confusion. What is going on? What is this? Is this some kind of joke? Shut up, Richard, Marcus Thorne hissed, his eyes fixed on Ellie. Mr. Tanaka ignored them all. He took a step back into the room, his gaze locked on Ellie. He was re-evaluating. He was intrigued. He gestured to the cowering translator, Kenji, and then to Ellie. In Japanese, he said, his voice curious. He, Kenji, told me you were offering appreciation. This man, he gestured to Sterling, offered me his punch. And you, what do you hear? Ellie felt the weight of every eye in the room. This was no longer a dinner. It was a courtroom. She looked at the 2 executives, their faces a mixture of fear and rage. She looked at Kenji, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. And she looked at Mr. Tanaka, a man who held the power to change the world, who was being treated like a fool. Mr. Tanaka, Ellie said, switching to perfect, professional English, her voice ringing with newfound and terrifying authority. My name is Eleanor Vance. She then turned to Richard Sterling. Mr. Sterling, you offered Mr. Tanaka $500 million for his U.S. operations. You called his life's work a green initiative and little solar panels. I was just... Sterling sputtered. Ellie cut him off, her voice like ice. Mr. Tanaka, she said, turning back to him and switching back to Japanese. In Japanese, this man, Mr. Sterling, is not just a fool. He is a dangerous fool. He thinks your K-12 patent is a simple photovoltaic. He has no understanding of its molecular battery storage capabilities. A flicker in Tanaka's eyes. She knew the terminology. Ellie pressed on, the words tumbling out of her. Years of research, of suppressed intellect, of frustration, all boiling over. In Japanese, your translator, Kenji-san, has been softening the reality. When Mr. Sterling offered to make this happen, you replied that he was a man with no imagination who wasted your time. Kenji translated this as, you like the wine. Kenji let out a small, strangled gasp. He was exposed. In Japanese, when Mr. Thorne called your work a marketable hobby, you replied that this is an insult and that they haven't read the specs. Kenji translated this as, you are pleased they admire your hobby. This is insane, Marcus whispered. In Japanese, and just now, Ellie continued, her voice rising, when Mr. Sterling offered you his insulting, leather-bound proposal, you delivered a 5-minute technical and financial evisceration of his offer. You stated correctly that his valuation is off by a factor of 10, that he failed to account for the cobalt suppression patent. She was on a roll. She was quoting his own words back to him. In Japanese, and that this entire meeting was an insult to your intelligence. And he, she pointed a trembling finger at the translator, was a coward for failing to translate your scorn. And in response, Kenji told these men that you were deeply honored and would consider the offer. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard Sterling and Marcus Thorne looked like they had been simultaneously punched in the gut. They finally understood. They hadn't been negotiating. They had been insulting one of the most powerful men in the world, and the waitress had just given them the play-by-play. Mr. Tanaka stared at Ellie. He was unreadable. He had been exposed, his dumb foreigner mask ripped away by, of all people, a waitress. Then he did something even more shocking. He laughed. It was not a ha-ha laugh. It was a short, sharp bark of genuine, surprised amusement. It was the sound of a chess grandmaster finding a new, unexpected, and brilliant opponent. He spoke, again in Japanese. In Japanese? And you? Where did a waitress learn to speak like a Keio University economics professor? Ellie took a shaky breath. In Japanese, I was not always a waitress. My name is Eleanor Vance. I was a PhD candidate at Columbia. My unfinished thesis was on your work, the new shogunate. I specialized in your energy patents. This was the twist. Tanaka's eyebrows shot up. This changed everything. He looked at Sterling and Thorne, his eyes now glinting with a sharp, predatory light. He looked at his own translator, Kenji, with profound disappointment. And then he looked at Ellie. He spoke, and this time it was back to that perfect, cold boardroom English, his real voice. "Ms. Vance," he said. Ellie flinched. The game was over. "You are fired." Richard Sterling's face flooded with triumphant relief. He smirked. "That's right. Get her out of here. She interfered." Ellie's heart plummeted to the floor. Of course, she had broken the ultimate rule. She had embarrassed a client. She had inserted herself. She was ruined. "You are fired," Mr. Tanaka repeated, his voice calm. "From this restaurant." He turned to his translator. "Kenji-san, you are on the 7 a.m. flight back to Tokyo. You are a terrible translator, a coward, and an embarrassment. You are reassigned to the Shipping Manifest Division in Osaka. Effective immediately. Leave." Kenji didn't have to be told twice. He gathered his briefcase and, without a word, fled the room. Tanaka then turned to the two executives who were no longer smirking. They looked like two men who had just seen their own graves. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Thorne, my people will be in touch with your people. This negotiation is not over, but it has changed." He then looked at Ellie. "Ms. Vance, my car is downstairs. We have much to discuss." Ellie was numb. She was in shock. I have to get my coat and my apron." "I will wait," Kaito Tanaka said, and for the first time, there was the barest hint of a smile on his face. "But please, hurry. We have a $500 million deal to restructure. And you are my new lead negotiator." Ellie walked out of the sovereign room on legs that felt like overcooked noodles. She didn't look at Sterling or Thorne. She couldn't. She walked past Gregory, the maitre d', who was standing in the hallway, his face ashen. He had clearly heard the commotion. "Vance," he hissed. "What did you do? Mr. Sterling is—" Ellie untied the strings of her apron, the symbol of her servitude, of her hidden life, and handed it to him. "Gregory, I quit," she said. Her voice didn't even waver. She walked through the main dining room, past the tables of oblivious titans eating their 300-a-plate dinners, and into the staff locker room. She grabbed her threadbare coat and her backpack, which contained a well-worn copy of a textbook on Japanese financial law. When she walked out the front door of Ethelred's and onto the cold cobblestone street, a black, impossibly sleek Bentley was waiting. It wasn't a car, it was a statement. The door was opened by a driver, and sitting inside, as calm as if he were in his own living room, was Kaito Tanaka. She slid in. The interior smelled of old leather and new money. The door closed with a thunk that sounded like a bank vault ceiling. The car pulled silently away from the curb. They sat in silence for several blocks, the New York City lights blurring past the tinted windows. Ellie's heart was hammering so hard she was sure Tanaka could hear it. Finally, Tanaka spoke, his voice quiet in the small space. He was still speaking English. "So, Ms. Vance, the new shogunate. An aggressive title." Ellie blushed. "It was a working title." "And your thesis, that you abandoned?" I had to. Family matters." "I see." Tanaka was quiet again. He tapped a single finger on the armrest. "You were rude, Miss Vance." Ellie's stomach dropped. "Sir? You were rude. You exposed my translator. You humiliated him. And you exposed me." "Mr. Tanaka, I am so sorry. I couldn't stand by while—" "While what?" he pressed, his voice sharp. "While fools acted like fools. That is the natural state of the world, Miss Vance. I am in the business of using that foolishness. Tonight, I was conducting a test to see how dishonest Mr. Sterling's translator, my own man, would be. I was measuring the stupidity tax. How much would they lie to get the deal? How much would they steal from me, believing I was a deaf mute?" Ellie was stunned. You knew Kenji was lying." "Of course," Tanaka said, as if it were obvious. "I hired him from a third-rate university because he was weak. I wanted to see if Sterling and Thorne would bully him. They did. I wanted to see if he would buckle. He did. The test was proceeding perfectly. My hypothesis was correct. Apex Global is a company built on arrogant, short-sighted, bullying fools." "Then, why are you still considering the deal?" "Because," Tanaka said, turning to look at her, his eyes intense in the dark, "their distribution network is the best in North America. I do not want to build a network. I want to buy one. I was prepared to let them win. Let them buy my US division for a fraction of its worth, all so I could gain access to their trucks, their warehouses, their shelf space. I would have let them think they had cheated me for about 6 months. Ellie started to see the long game. "And in 6 months?" A thin smile. "My K-12 patent would be in every home, and my new K-13 patent, the one they know nothing about, would be ready. I would then buy their bankrupt company for pennies on the dollar and take my distribution network back. It was a simple, clean, 2-year plan." Ellie's mind reeled. This man's brain. "But you, Miss Vance, you are the anomaly. You are the variable I did not and could not anticipate. You ruined my perfect experiment." I'm sorry," Ellie whispered, feeling small again. "Do not be," Tanaka said, "because you have given me a much better idea, a faster, more dramatic plan. You, Miss Vance, are a weapon, and you have been hiding in plain sight. I find that admirable." He leaned back. "Tell me about your family, the matters that forced a brilliant mind like yours to serve wine to idiots." Ellie hesitated. This was the raw nerve. This was the real reason. "My brother," she said, her voice thick. "His name is Liam. He has a very rare autoimmune disorder, chronic variable immunodeficiency. His body, it doesn't fight. The treatments are astronomical. A new experimental gene therapy. It costs more than I can even... I had to drop out. I took 3 jobs. This was the highest paying one. The tips, they go straight to the medical bills." She was mortified, laying her pathetic life bare before this titan. "The debt?" Tanaka asked, his voice neutral. "How much?" "It's $450,000, and that's just from the last 2 years. It never stops." Tanaka nodded, as if she had just told him the weather. He picked up the in-car phone and spoke a short, sharp command. "Get me Director Hideo." A moment later. "Hideo, I am wiring 450,000 lols from my personal account. No, it is not an investment. It is a recruitment fee. Yes, pay off all medical liens for a Liam Vance, Liam. Yes. And then I want you to arrange for him to be flown to the Tokyo Medical Institute, the one I... Yes. Have Dr. Ito clear his schedule. He will be my personal guest." He hung up the phone. Ellie was just staring. Tears were streaming down her face. She was making small, gasping sounds. What did you... I can't... Ms. Vance. Eleanor," he said, and his voice was, for the first time, not cold. Not sharp. It was firm. "I cannot have my new Vice President of American Acquisitions worrying about trivialities. Your debt is paid. Your brother's health is now my concern. He will be seen by the best doctors in the world. He will be cured if it is possible." Vice President," Ellie choked out. "Yes, that is the new plan. Why let Sterling think he won, when I can simply crush him? It is so much cleaner." He looked at her, his eyes serious. "Your family is now taken care of. Your mind, your brilliant, wasted mind, now belongs to me. Are you ready to work, Miss Vance?" Ellie, tears streaming, just nodded. Yes, what do we do?" "We do not go to my office. We go to yours." The car was pulling up to a towering glass skyscraper in Midtown. The Tanaka Dynamics logo was discreet, but unmissable. "First," Mr. Tanaka said, as the driver opened her door, "we get you a new suit. Then, you and I are going to rewrite Mr. Sterling's proposal, and tomorrow you will present it to him, and he will accept it." The next morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, Richard Sterling and Marcus Thorne were sitting in the most intimidating conference room they had ever been in. It was on the 80th floor penthouse of the Tanaka Dynamics building. 3 walls were pure glass, offering a terrifyingly beautiful view of all of Manhattan. The 4th wall was a solid block of black, polished obsidian. They had been summoned by a one-line email sent at 4 Silhouette M. "Be here, 9 a.m. They had not slept. They had spent the night alternating between blind panic, rage, and self-recrimination. Their $500 million deal, the deal that was supposed to save their floundering company, was in ashes. "It was the waitress, Richard," Marcus kept saying. "It was a setup. He had her planted." "Don't be an idiot," Sterling snapped, dabbing sweat from his brow. "She was a goddamned accident. A bomb. Who hires a PhD as a waitress?" "The real question," Marcus said, his voice low, "is what he said. That English, it was perfect. He's been playing us. He's been playing everyone. He's Justin." The door to the conference room opened with a silent hiss. In walked Eleanor Vance. She was not the same woman from the restaurant. The black sheath and apron were gone. In their place was a dark, impossibly sharp Alexander McQueen pantsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, professional bun. She wore no jewelry, save for a simple, elegant watch. She radiated a cold, dangerous competence. She was followed by 2 lawyers who flanked the door. And then Mr. Tanaka entered. He was wearing his same, simple, dark suit. He looked calm. He looked amused. He did not sit at the head of the table. He sat in a simple chair against the obsidian wall, nodded to Ellie, and said in his perfect English, "Miss Vance, the floor is yours." Sterling and Thorne looked like they were going to be sick. "It is a setup," Sterling half yelled, pointing a shaking finger. You were a spy." Ellie didn't even flinch. She placed her leather satchel on the table and opened it. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice as clear and cold as the view, "Mr. Tanaka has rejected your proposal to acquire his U.S. operations." "Rejected? We can offer more, 600 million. "Don't be insulting," Ellie said, without looking up. "Mr. Tanaka is no longer interested in selling you anything. We are here to discuss his acquisition of you." The blood drained from Richard Sterling's face. "What? That's impossible. We're a public company. You can't just—" "We can, and we are," Ellie said. She slid a new, much thicker, leather-bound document across the table. "This is not a proposal. This is a statement of terms. Tanaka Dynamics is initiating a hostile takeover of Apex Global. We will be making a tender offer to your shareholders at 10 a.m. It is 9:05. Marcus Thorne grabbed the document. He flipped through it, his eyes widening in horror. The numbers, the financials, they were all there. How did you get this?" Marcus whispered. "Our Q4 projections, our debt-to-equity ratios, this is all internal." Ellie finally looked at him. "Mr. Thorne, while you were busy studying marketing reports, I was studying companies. I've been following Apex Global's stock for 18 months. Your company is a house of cards. You've been leveraging your assets to cover your losses for 3 years. This merger with Tanaka wasn't a strategy. It was a lifeline. You needed his patents to secure your next round of funding." She turned to Mr. Tanaka. "Isn't that correct, sir?" Tanaka smiled faintly. "Ms. Vance is, as usual, correct." Ellie turned back to the two broken men. "Your $500 million offer wasn't an offer. It was a prayer, and it has been denied." You bitch!" Sterling roared, lunging to his feet. The two lawyers at the door took a simultaneous step forward. Sterling froze. "I believe," Tanaka said, his voice quiet but carrying across the room, "that this is the part of the negotiation where you implode." Ellie continued as if nothing had happened. "However, Mr. Tanaka is a merciful man." "He is?" Marcus said, grasping at any straw. "He does not want to be in the messy business of dismantling your company. It is inefficient. So he is offering you an alternative." She slid a second, much thinner document across the table. "This," she said, "is the new deal. It is a strategic partnership, not an acquisition." Richard Sterling, seeing a way out, grabbed it. "Partnership, yes. We can partner." He read the first line, and his face went white. This is 80-20, he shrieked. "In your favor, and Apex Global will concede full R&D control to Tanaka Dynamics. All existing U.S. distribution networks will be rebranded as Tanaka Apex. Richard Sterling and Marcus Thorne will tender their resignations." He looked up, his eyes bulging. "This isn't a partnership. This is extinction." "No, Mr. Sterling," Ellie said, standing up and gathering her things. "This is karma. You were offering to buy a racehorse, thinking it was a mule. The price for the racehorse has just been adjusted. You see, Mr. Tanaka doesn't want your company. He just wants your trucks. This deal lets you keep your golden parachutes. The other deal," she gestured to the hostile takeover folder, "does not. It also involves a full SEC investigation into your creative accounting." Marcus Thorne, the jackal, knew when he was beaten. He grabbed a pen. "Richard," he said, his voice dead. "Sign it." "But our jobs are gone, Richard. This is about our freedom." Marcus signed his name. All eyes went to Richard Sterling. He was shaking. His entire world, built on bluster and bullying, had been dismantled in 10 minutes by a former waitress. He picked up the pen. He signed. Ellie took the document. "Thank you, gentlemen. Our lawyers will show you out. Do not bother cleaning out your desks. We've already had that taken care of." As the two executives were escorted out, looking like ghosts, Mr. Tanaka stood up and clapped. Slowly, precisely. "Bravo, Miss Vance. A bit brutal, but bravo." "They were disrespectful," Ellie said, the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving her hands shaky. "They were not just disrespectful," Tanaka corrected. "They were wrong, which in business is far worse." He walked over to the glass wall, looking down at the city. "They saw the world as they wished it to be. They saw me as a fool. They saw you as furniture, and that is a fatal lack of imagination." He turned to her. "The hostile takeover documents, they were real?" Ellie smiled faintly. "Of course. I spent all night with your legal team. We were fully prepared to launch the tender offer at 10:01 a.m. This was the merciful path." Tanaka studied her, his head tilted. You truly are a weapon. I am very, very glad you are on my side. I need to call my family. About Liam," Ellie said, the reality of the morning's other events crashing back in. "It is already done," Tanaka said. "My assistant has arranged everything. A private medical jet is wheels up from Titterboro in 1 hour. Your brother and mother are on their way to it now." Ellie burst into tears. It wasn't a gasp or a choke. It was a full-on, body-racking sob. All the terror, the stress, the years of sleepless nights, and the crushing weight of the debt. It all broke at once. Tanaka did not move. He simply waited. He did not offer a handkerchief or a word of comfort. He just gave her the space to break, and then to reform. After a minute, Ellie pulled herself together, wiping her eyes angrily. "I'm sorry, that was unprofessional." "Do not apologize," Tanaka said. "It was necessary. You have been running on an empty tank for years. Now, you are refueled. Your mind is clear." He handed her a new folder. "Your real employment contract. Your salary is $400,000, not $300. The $450 GG0 payment was, as I said, a signing bonus. This," he handed her a set of keys, "is for the corporate apartment. It is 2 blocks from here. You will need your rest." Ellie looked at the keys, then at the man. "Why? Why? Me?" "Because, Ms. Vance," Tanaka said, "the world is full of Richard Sterlings, men who are loud and arrogant and predictable. But people like us, people who choose to be invisible, who choose to listen, we are the ones who— how did Mr. Sterling put it? We are the ones who have the punch." He walked to the door. "Your office is next to mine. Your new assistant, Sarah, will show you. You have 1 hour to settle in. Then, at 11:00 a.m., we are having a video conference with the board in Tokyo. You will be translating." Ellie watched him go. She looked down at the keys in her hand. She looked at the signed partnership document that had just functionally decapitated one of the largest firms in New York. She was not Eleanor Vance, the waitress. She was not Eleanor Vance, the failed PhD candidate. She was Ms. Vance, the vice president of American acquisitions, and she had a lot of work to do. 6 months later, the name Eleanor Vance was a whisper, a legend, and a warning in the glass and steel canyons of global finance. She was no longer just Ms. Vance, the VP. In the private circles of her competitors, she had a nickname, Kage no Ko, the shogun's voice. She had earned it. The Tanaka Apex integration, which analysts had predicted would be a bloody, year-long affair, was completed in 90 days. It was Ellie who had foreseen the logistical union ambush in Chicago. and had already negotiated a new, more favorable contract before the old one was even challenged. It was Ellie who, in a 3-day marathon session in Berlin, had dismantled the arguments of the German-based Gigavolt Corporation, acquiring their entire heavy transport battery division for what was later described in the Financial Times as a stunning, borderline unethical bargain. And it was Ellie who, just last month, had seen a small, desperate news item about a failed crypto consulting firm called Apex Thorn Innovations. Richard Sterling and Marcus Thorne, it turned out, hadn't just been given golden parachutes, they'd been given enough rope. Their creative accounting hadn't stopped at Apex Global. The SEC had just indicted them both for wire fraud. They were facing, as the report put it, significant jail time. Karma, Ellie had learned, wasn't always a lightning bolt. Sometimes it was a mountain of well-documented, meticulously filed legal briefs. Today, however, was a different kind of stage. Ellie was in Geneva, a panelist at the Global Economic Summit. She was not there to represent Kaito Tanaka. She was there representing herself. She sat on a stage, flanked by a grizzled Norwegian shipping magnate, a notoriously arrogant French tech CEO named Jean-Pierre Dubois, and the finance minister of a G7 nation. "Ms. Vance," the moderator said, "you are the new face here, and your company's, or rather, Mr. Tanaka's company's, recent growth has been, to put it mildly, explosive. Some would say predatory." Jean-Pierre Dubois, the Frenchman, chuckled into his microphone. "Ah, predatory, yes, but one must admire the, how do you say, the voice of the campaign. Mr. Tanaka, he is a silent man. But you, mademoiselle, you are not. Tell us, is it true you were discovered in a restaurant? I find these stories so charming, so unlikely." The condescension was thick enough to cut. It was Sterling, all over again, just with a better tailor and a different accent. The audience tensed. They smelled blood. Ellie smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was a precise, calculated expression. "Thank you, Mr. Dubois. It's always a pleasure to hear from you." She turned her body slightly toward him. "I find your stories charming as well. For example, the story of how your company, Inno France, has been trying to crack the North American logistics market for 5 years, but keeps failing because your innovative strategy relies on a 1990s-era hub-and-spoke distribution model." Dubois' smile froze. Ellie continued, her voice clear and cutting, like a diamond shard. "You call our growth predatory. I call it efficient. You see, Mr. Tanaka and I believe in a very simple principle. We listen. When we acquired Apex Global's distribution network, which, I might add, you were also bidding on, and lost, we didn't just slap our name on it. We listened to the drivers. We listened to the warehouse managers. We found inefficiencies. The same inefficiencies, in fact, that are currently costing your company an estimated 1.2 billion euros a quarter. That is an internal number," Dubois sputtered, his face turning a deep, blotchy red. "That is not public." "It is now," Ellie said flatly. She then did something that made the entire audience gasp. She switched mid-sentence to flawless, Parisian-accented French. "In French, Mr. Dubois, the difference between us is not charm. It's not where we were discovered. It is that you see the world as you wish it was. I see it as it is. You call me a voice. Fine. But a voice is useless unless it has something to say. And what I am saying is that your company is a dinosaur, and the meteor, the K-13 patent, is already in the atmosphere. You should have listened." She switched back to English. "As for my discovery, yes, Mr. Dubois, I was in the service industry, and I learned that the person you ignore, The person you assume is just a waitress is the one who hears everything. A lesson you are just now learning." The room was silent. Then the Norwegian magnate threw his head back and laughed. The moderator's jaw was on the floor. Jean-Pierre Dubois looked like he had been physically struck. When Ellie walked off the stage, the applause was deafening. 2 figures were waiting for her in the wings. Kaito Tanaka, his arms crossed, was one. The other was a young man in a sharp suit who looked healthy, vibrant, and proud. "Liam," Ellie said, her entire demeanor softening as she hugged her brother. "That was brutal, Elle," Liam Vance said, grinning. "I almost felt sorry for him." "Almost," Ellie agreed. Liam, fully recovered, was now running the European outreach for the Tanaka Foundation, managing the distribution of medical grants. He wasn't just cured, he was thriving. "Mr. Tanaka," Ellie said, turning to her boss. Tanaka nodded, the barest hint of a smile on his face. "Ms. Vance, a predictable takedown. You have become unsubtle." "He was an arrogant fool, sir," Ellie said, matching his formal tone. "You taught me they respond best to punch." A flicker of genuine amusement. "Indeed." His assistant, Sarah, hurried over and handed Ellie a tablet. "Speaking of." Ellie looked down. It was a live feed of the stock market. France was down 18% in the last 20 minutes. "It seems," Tanaka said, "that the world has finally learned to listen when you speak. The board of France has just called an emergency meeting. They are asking for a partnership negotiation." "How predictable," Ellie said. "Yes." Tanaka looked at her, not as an employer to an employee, but as a grandmaster to his protege. "The Shogun's voice is a dramatic title, but a voice only repeats. You compose." He turned, and they began walking toward the exit, a phalanx of security and assistants falling in behind them. "We are done in Geneva," Tanaka said. "The meeting with Dubois is unnecessary. He will accept any terms we send." "So, where to next?" Ellie asked, matching his stride. "A new variable has presented itself. The Orbital Launch Division of Astra Dynamics. They are struggling to fund their new engine. They believe I am a traditionalist who does not understand space." Ellie stopped, a look of pure, predatory, intellectual hunger on her face. "Orbital launch. Sir, if we could integrate the K-13 patent with their fuel suppression systems, we could cut launch costs by 40%, Tanaka finished, not even breaking stride. "Yes, I thought you would see it." He looked back at her. "I have translated our intentions. They are, however, refusing to meet with the translator. They want me alone." "A test," Ellie said. "A test," he agreed. "They wish to see if the Shogun is really just a man hiding behind his voice. They will be at the New York office tomorrow, 9 a.m. "They'll be walking into the Sovereign Room," Ellie stated. "Exactly," Tanaka said, as the Bentley pulled up and the driver opened the door. "So, Ms. Vance, what is the strategy?" Ellie smiled, a full, genuine, and absolutely terrifying smile. She slid into the car, no longer a ghost, no longer just a voice, but the woman who composed the music. "Sir," she said, pulling out her laptop, "it's time they learned a new word for karma." And that, everyone, is the incredible story of Eleanor Vance and Kaito Tanaka. It's a powerful reminder that the smartest person in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the person you've been trained to ignore. The person listening, learning, and waiting. What did you think of Richard Sterling's instant karma? And what do you think was the real moment the deal was lost for him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of hidden talents, dramatic twists, and karmic justice, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a good story today. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that bell so you won't miss the next real-life drama we have in store. Thank you for listening.